big thank you to everyone that has liked the stream. If you haven't liked the stream, go ahead and smash that like button. Like it is your stepsister of battle trapped in a washing machine. No, Step Garsman, what are you doing with that bayonet? Oh, I think you know what I'm doing with that bayonet. There we go. So first thing I want to say is a huge thank you to JCMS Meta Monday. He is the guy that puts together these meta stats. He is the guy that allows us to peer into the veil, to pierce the veil of competitive play. So there's a link to this data down in the description, and that will take you straight to his website. And he also has a Patreon. So if you like this kind of stuff and you want to support this this data, and you want to support this kind of this effort, then please take a look at the Patreon and consider supporting JCMS and his Meta Monday goodness. We should note that it is a middling week. Slightly quiet. I would say that an average week is about 750, 800 players. No, 600 to 700 is a normal week. A quiet week is sort of 400 to 500. So it's a middling week. 668 players, 1,503 victories out of 3,068 games. There were 18 events this weekend. So this is based on 18 events. Now, coming in last, we have the Space Marines. Jimmy Space and his Marines coming in last. This is a little bit of a surprise. I personally believe this to be a bit of an anomalous result. The Space Marines overall had a 42% win rate. Sorry, that's not true at all. Had 42 players, 78 wins out of 205 games played. 3 people were able to go 4-1, but no one won an event. And overall, the faction had a 38% win rate. Now, if we get it, so that looks kind of bad, right? Like Marines at the bottom. Here's the thing, right? Here's the thing. There are really 3 detachments here that are bringing everything down. Okay, so someone ran first company task force and went literally 1 game, 1 win, 4 losses. So he only had a 20% win rate. And then you had the 1 Imperial Fist player left. That's probably fucking Valrak right there. And he went 1-4 as well. So he only had a 20% win rate. And then you had the Firestorm Assault Force guys, which normally Firestorm Assault has been doing very, very well. If you go back to like last week, Firestorm Assault was like in one of the top for percentages. And this time they only had a 27% win rate. So I feel like these 3 results are kind of bringing things down a little bit. Mad respect to both of these brave, beautiful motherfuckers. Clearly they went to a tournament and it didn't quite go as well as they probably expected, but hey, they're still representing and they're still doing great, so there we go. But if we just look at these like 3, you can see that Gladius Task Force continues to do very well for Marines. So week in, week out, we see Gladius Task Force, and it just kind of it chugs along. You know, it chugs along, and it always has like 40-something% win rate. So it looks like Gladius did quite well this week, and it had a good number of players, with 9 players getting 22 wins out of 44 games. One guy, like consistently, someone is like between the various space attachments. What if a few people are getting that 4-1 with Gladius? So it's great to see like just the good old fashioned Space Marine take all comers detachment. It's still allowing people to get some good results. These two detachments here are a little bit paradoxical, because on the one hand you've got Vanguard and Ironstorm, which on paper are the strongest detachments that Marines get. For Vanguard, they had 8 players, 15 wins out of 38 games. And for Ironstorm Spearhead, they had 17 players, 31 wins out of 82 games, giving each detachment respectively 39% and 38%. Now, on paper, that looks shit, right? You got a good enough sample size, and everyone is just getting friggin' destroyed. But the real kicker, the real sort of, if you scratch below the surface, the real juice is this number here. So someone went 4-1 with Ironstorm, someone went 4-1 with Vanguard, and someone went 4-1 with Gladius Task Force. If I were a betting man, I think that, like I said, this is just an anomaly. And if I was to speculate on why the win rate's gone down a bit, yet we're still seeing people being able to pull out 4-1 with Marines, it could be down to them just getting a good run. It could be down to them getting favourable matchups. But I suspect it's down to, I mean, look at how many Ironstorm players we've got here. I think that people, well, you know, I think that we've probably had a few more people here that Ironstorm is good. A few more people who've been smashing that, you know, who started off 10th edition with the Leviathan box sets. They've been building those Marines up. Because what, it's only been like, the edition's only been out like 8 months. It's not even been out a full year yet, guys. When you think about how long it can take to get to 2,000 points, to get your first army at 2,000 points, and then to start expanding out and trying other things, I think what we've probably seen here is either a bunch of new people jumping onto Ironstorm and assuming it's an auto win and it not quite going to plan, or we're seeing the people that started at the beginning of 10th edition who are starting to branch out for the first time with their Marine army, start, you know, try something they've not tried before. Everyone, all their mates tell them, oh, just put your arm to Ironstorm, put your arm to Ironstorm. And it's not quite just translated to more wins. Because one thing, a lot of people think that Ironstorm is, and I've always said it's clearly the strongest attachment for Marines, but it's not an auto win. You really have to build around Ironstorm. As well, you really have to build around all detachments. If you're going to go down a specific, unless you're going Gladius Task Force, you really need to be able, you know, when you go in Vanguard and you go in Ironstorm, you need to be building into those to get the most out of them. For sure. And so if you're someone that's basically, you know, got 2 Ballistic Dreadnoughts and think that that's enough reason to justify going Ironstorm, well, that's probably why they've got a 38% win rate this time. Probably. Which I know sounds a bit harsh. I don't mean it in such a dickish way, but it's probably a big factor. Likewise, Vanguard is really tricky. You can't go balls deep with Vanguard. You need to put just the right amount of pressure on. And if you overcook it, it's going to cause some issues. So that's why when you look at these, only 1 in 17 people went the distance, but it shows that detachment can go the distance. Likewise with Vanguard. And then Gladius here, I'm not surprised Gladius has done quite well because it's just take all comers. So Marines overall look bad, but when you scratch below the surface, they're actually fine. And this data is probably just a blip, probably just a dip. And when you're looking at Marines, it's important to look beyond the title figures. It's important to look at the individual detachments. And it's important to look at the most important figure, how many people are going 4-1 or better with a particular detachment. This is the same logic here somewhat applies to Tyranids. So Tyranids are in a funny spot. And there's a few things to say every week about Tyranids, okay? But I don't like to repeat myself, and I like to try and add additional little bits of analysis each week, because otherwise it's the same shit, different day, right? Tyranids, let's get the normal shit out the way first. Tyranids have got 24 players with 47 wins out of 118 games played. 1 person went the distance, and overall the faction has a 40% win rate. When we dive a little bit deeper into the win rate, we can clearly see that Invasion Fleet has been doing very well, continues to be the crutch that most Tyranid players lean on. 13 players out of 24, so over half their players ran this one detachment. They got 29 wins out of 65 games played. The only person that went 4-1 was running Invasion Fleet, and they had a 45% win rate, which puts it 5% the average for the faction overall. Okay, Vanguard Onslaught had a few players. It always gets a few players, but Vanguard Onslaught was a bit tricky, and I personally see Vanguard Onslaught as a bit of a 2 and 3 detachment. It'll always bamboozle a couple of people that haven't played against it before, but anyone who has played against it before knows that the way you beat Vanguard is you just fucking beat the crap out of it. You don't let it be tricksy. They go, okay, I can do this and battle shot this and fucking, reach around that. And you go, that's very interesting. I'm going to drive a Rogal Dawn into the face of your guy. So please feel free to go low knot 3 inches away. I am within 1 inch of you. Get fucked. So that's the way you beat Vanguard is brute force, ironically. Now, a couple of other bits. Synaptic Nexus, people continue trying to get Synaptic Nexus to work. Every week we see people jumping on this. Every week Synaptic Nexus just has a fucking trash win rate. So, well done on people trying to make it work, but I don't think Pseudo Armor of Contempt is enough to justify coming away from essentially these two. Crusher Stampede, only one dude ran Crusher Stampede. He didn't get the memo that it's terrible. Probably some dude returning from 8th and 9th edition with his old Crusher Stampede. Or maybe someone just like big bugs and he cannot lie. Either way, Crusher Stampede went down. The surprise here, somewhat of a surprise, is the Unending Swarm. Only had 2. You don't get a huge amount of players in Unending Swarm, but they only went 2 wins out of 8 games. So they only had 25% win rate. On the surface, so I always think Unending Swarm is very, 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 very powerful because it can just win by just like spamming. And if someone just doesn't have enough anti-infantry, you'll just win. Like if there's always going to be, if you go to an RTT, there's always going to be someone who's having enough anti-infantry. If you go to a GT, there's always going to be 2 people that haven't probably got enough anti-infantry. So you should really be looking at like a 2 and 3. You should, even on a bad day, 2 and 3, and on a good day, you're looking at like 3 and 2 kind of thing. The problem with an Unending Swarm though is it either completely overwhelms or gets flattened in 2 or 3 turns because Termagants are just so, and Hormagaunts have just got no durability whatsoever, and neither do fucking Gargoyles. So Unending Swarm, it's not it's not an infallible detachment, but it is interesting. The reason why I think it's not doing so well is it does require... You can't cut corners on it. You can't be like, I've got 120 bugs. That's enough. It's like, no. This is the Unending Swarm. You need to go balls deep on the Unending Swarm, or it's going to punish you. And I suspect that some people will have got to that 120. I think I've got enough level, and grossly underestimated just how many bugs they're going to lose, and they're not actually swarming enough. That'd be my suspicion. Or maybe they've had bad matchups. It does have very bad matchups. Now, like we said, we're sort of just discussing the general stuff, and then we'll get into the specifics in a moment. The big thing with NIDS in overall is they struggle with anti-tank, which is why NIDS have been down in the bottom half for a long time, and I don't expect NIDS to change much in that regard, because... Well, we're increasingly in a mechanized meta. We're increasingly in a mechanized meta, and being a faction that can't deal with mech and armor, well, that's not good. So Tyrannus being this low, generally speaking, don't surprise me. That's something we've talked about a lot. Here's the figure that worries me the most. Maybe it's just a quiet week, but this is the figure to watch. Player numbers. I don't know about you, but I feel like a faction that is traditionally one of the more popular Xenos factions, and traditionally, and also started in Leviathan in 10th edition, I feel like 24 players is low. My concern, the big thing I would watch with Tyrannus is nothing to do with win rates or anything like that. Fuck all that noise. The biggest thing to determine the health of the faction is if these player numbers continue to dwindle. Maybe I'm making something out of nothing. Maybe I'm reading into it too much. But as Rebel Carnifex has said, they've been bottom for 2 or 3 weeks in a row now. They've been very low for 2 or 3 weeks. And I feel like we've seen the Tyrannid player numbers stagnate and then begin to drop. So fingers crossed I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. But that's the number to watch. And that's the number the GW should be watching right now. Adeptus Mechanicus. Are the Cog Boys coming back? Have the 3D printers and recasters been fired up? Has the college fund been spent? Has the inheritance been spunked? Because I don't mean to alarm anyone, but for the 3rd week in a row, we've had okay AdMech numbers. Not great. Not great. But it is a long cry, a far cry. But when we had weeks where no one played them, and a long way from when we had weeks where there were literally 2 dudes that played them. 9 players. 9 players is a big deal for this faction. A real big deal. 9 players with AdMech. And it's not been the first time where they've had double digits or near double digits. I suspect that as much as it is as hard as it is to buy this army legitimately brand new in box from GW, some people are clearly putting the time in to get their AdMech working. All right, crunch took them this long to save up the money. Absolutely. So digging into the AdMech a bit more, they had 9 players. 18. This 9 players, as significant as this number is for Tyranids, this is as significant for the AdMech. So 18 games out of 44 played, 1 person going 4-1, 41% win rate. However, it's not really 41%, it's actually 43%. And 43% is perfectly reasonable. Not a bad win rate whatsoever. Skitarii Hunter cohort. 1 guy didn't get the memo and got fucking bodied with Data Psalm Conclave. Poor bastard. 8 people took this shit seriously. And they got 17 wins out of 40 games played, leading to a 43% win rate, with 1 dude going 4-1. And every single week, we see someone getting good with AdMech. Someone going 4-1 with them. We don't see any fucking tournament wins, but 4-1 with AdMech. Very, very, very respectable, man. Very respectable. So yeah, I think AdMech, if I was to make a bold statement indeed, I think AdMech are back, and all the gnashing of teeth around the price of AdMech is, I think, has not taken into account how prolific alternative sources of models are these days. Now, of course, Orcs right now are still running the index, and they'll probably be running the index a little bit. It's going to be almost immediately redundant. The last hurrah of the index, right? And we might see the index 1 more week, depending on when tournaments. So obviously, tournaments may been organised with and had list submission deadlines that were before when the Orc Codex dropped, even though the tournament takes place after the tournament drop. So there might be next week, we might see a few tournaments with the Orc Codex, but I suspect we'll still see a few with the index. So we're basically at the twilight. And I think rather than like going through like this data here, we'll quickly look at it. 36 players shows healthy player numbers, more Orc players than Tyranid players, and Tyranids have a codex. And Orcs don't, and Orcs don't even have a codex yet. And in fact, basically, normally when you see like a codex about to come out, you see a dip in player numbers. But it seems like people are just getting hyped up to play some Orcs. So good player numbers, 77 wins out of 174 games. No one out of 36 players, not one Orc player went 4-2. No one went better than 3-2. So that's actually noteworthy. It's also entirely understandable because, well, the Orc Codex has had a 44% win rate overall, by the way. It's entirely understandable because the Orc Index did one thing. If we look back on this thing, the last 8 months of Orcs, it was just pressure. Orcs just, from day one, been putting stuff in trucks, yeeting it at you. They've been taking Mosrog, yeeting it at you. And there were just very many well-worn combos. Put a war boss with some knobs. Oh! Oh, do you know what I mean? Oh, there's some mega knobs in a truck there. Oh, feeling bold today. And all that kind of stuff. If we look back over the last 8 months of Orcs, it's not surprising that we're seeing some pretty... that they've got a healthy community. They've always had a pretty healthy community. But it's also not surprising that we've seen them basically drop down to like 3 and 2 before their codex hits, because everyone has basically figured out what orcs do. And so whether they lose the first game or whether they lose the last game doesn't really matter. They're always going to lose a couple of games in a tournament now. The index, at first it caught a few people by surprise. I remember the early days of 10th. We were cheering the orcs on for like 2 weeks. The only codex that had any play into Eldar was not codex. The only index that had any play into Eldar was orcs. We were like, yeah, go, you mad green cunts, go! But unfortunately, I think, you know, the Eldar did adapt. they definitely had a couple of moments in the sun, and as samey as that index got, and as well worn as that index got by the end of its lifespan, I think that I think that orc players can look back on that index with a certain sense of like fondness. It wasn't great, but it wasn't terrible. They've certainly had worse books, for sure. And I think that index has it's done the orcs proud. Not great, not terrible, but considering some of the other factions out there, I think it's something orc players can lay that trusty chopper to one side. With a contented feeling in their heart. That's how I see it, man. That's how I see it. The big thing is how orcs are going to do when their codex drops. Now, I suspect when the codex drops, there is going to be for 2 to 3 weeks. I think the codex is already out, isn't it? Maybe when the tournament results start flowing in, I should say. I suspect when the tournament results start flowing in, we're probably going to see a real roller coaster on the orc win rate. There's going to be a flurry of activity as people try out Green Tide, try out Bully Boys, try out Dreadmob, they try out Speedwell. Orc players will. Some people will settle on what they think is the best and just take that. But I think that those will be competitive players with orcs. But the orc players, the actual, the diehard people, I think are going to be. They're going to be using different attachments at tournaments, different attachments. They're going to be trying everything out. It's going to be like an all-you-can-eat buffet. And so, as a result, with them trying a lot out, I do think we're going to see a lot of roller coastering. And not only do I think we'll see a lot of roller coastering for the faction as a whole, but I think we're going to see a lot of roller coasting within those detachments as well. As people, a bunch of new people will jump on the Green Tide and fuck it up, and it won't work. And then next time those people jump on Dreadmob and they'll fuck that up as well, because they've not tried it before, so they're just sort of trying all sorts of different things out. So I think the orc win rate is going to be in for some turbulent times, but I think everyone who has seen that orc codex has said that they have 6 great flavorful detachments, and that the orc codex. I don't know if it seems S tier yet. Some people believe that it is going to be, but I think that the orc codex is just going to be solid. And I think when and if things settle down, I think we'll see orcs fit in a comfortable place with a codex that is going to stay fresh and exciting for the rest of the edition, which is great. It's great to get an interesting codex at the beginning edition, because it means you get loads of time to try out everything that's coming. So, nice. So, well done to the orc players. Big well done to them. And looking forward, I think everyone, whether you're an orc player or not, everyone is looking forward for the next chapter in the story. Moving swiftly on, we have the Chaos Space Marines. And interesting. We're seeing some stuff happening here. So, firstly, 31 players. Very respectable number of players. And secondly, they got 66 wins out of 147 games. giving them a 45% win rate, with almost 10% of the players going 4-1. Now, no one won an event, but going 4-1 with Chaos Space Marines is really good. I like that number right there. I like that number. There's been so much bitching and moaning from the Chaos Space Marine community. I mean, don't get me wrong. Chaos Space Marines, for as long as I can remember, have always been quite a salty community, and that's part of their identity. And there's no lambasting or shade being thrown around there. It's their identity, what they love. We love tanks, they love salt. That's how it works. But it's great to see that I feel like the worm has turned. I feel like the franchise is coming around. I feel like maybe we're starting to see Chaos Space Marines. For a long time, I think they struggled after the nerfs, and I think it was very much I think at the beginning of 10, the Chaos Space Marine community put a huge amount of effort into unlocking what worked, and just as they all got it synchronized, the big nerf came. So I think that felt like years of academy training wasted. And so I think they definitely took a big morale, as a community, took a bit of morale hit. And you tended to see people just, rather than trying to like adapt and roll with the punches, people were like, no, I want this combo to still work. I want the Abaddon Brick. I want the Forge Fiend, the Untargeted Forge Fiend. I want that to still work. Just bring it back, bring it back, bring it back. And I think now what we're seeing is Chaos Space Marines being like, fuck it. Fine, we'll adapt. We'll take something else other than Abaddon, which is good. See, I think there's been a few weeks when 0 Chaos Space Marine players went 4-1, and to see not just one, but to see 3 people go 4-1, and to see the player-based numbers picking up again as well is great. So we'll keep Chaos Space Marines at the moment aren't in. I don't think anyone would argue that they're in like an S tier spot, but I think that Chaos Space Marines have got more to their index than meets the eye. And personally, if I was to collect Chaos Space Marines, I think they are one of the best mechanized armies in the game right now. Chaos Space Marines have the ability to take 12 well-equipped with anti-tank and anti-infantry, take all comers armored vehicles in a list, and still have lots of points left over. And you can give every single one of those armored vehicles lethal hits or sustained hits on a 5+. That's got some play to it right there. The Chaos Space Marines, I think they've also, I think if you can mech up, that gives, as this applies to any faction, if you can mechanize an armored up, I think that it gives you a huge advantage over factions which can't. And as far as I can see, Chaos Space Marines have the tools to not suddenly become S tier. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying they're going to completely, retake over the galaxy, Eye of Terror spreads across everywhere. I'm not saying that's going to happen. What I am saying is that I think they have the tools to become a solid 3-2, 4-1 faction. So, 38 players. 38 players. That's good numbers. That's more players than Tyranids, more players than Orcs, more players than Chaos Space Marines, as many players as Death Guard, who are a very popular faction. And lots and lots of, almost as many players as Space Marines. 38 players is great. Those 38 players managed to get 85 wins out of 188 games, which gave us overall a 45% win rate, which does seem a little bit, low. We've dropped down, 5-6% from last week. Do not fear, my little chickadees, because out of those 38 players, more than 20% of them went 4-1. That is a ridiculous number of players going 4-1. That's as many players going 4-1 as fucking Eldar. Okay? There were only 2 factions that had more wins. They're more 4-1 players than us. Blood Angels, maybe 3 factions. So Blood Angels and Necrons had more, and Eldar had the same, which makes us the faction with the third highest number of players that went 4-1. Not too bad. This number keeps going up, man. It's strong. As I said, send me off the black ships. I said it a long time ago. I said it last week as well. I said that when people start figuring out that Guard are good, what's going to happen is loads of people are going to jump on it, and the win rates. I said the Guard numbers are going to be all over the fucking place. The win rate's going to be down. It takes at least, as I always say, Guard is an experienced faction. You tend to lose your first 6 a dozen games, and then. But as more people filter into the faction, you're going to see the number of players that unlock the secret sauce start going up. 8 players going 4-1 shows incredible faction strength. Incredible faction strength. And on top of that, we also had one person who won a tournament. I'm not sure which tournament it was. Let's have a little look. And then you had, coming first, at a major, 76 players. That's a major right there. Or maybe it's a very big GT. I always feel like a local GT is 30 players, 20 to 30 players. A regular size GT is 40 to 50 players. And when you start getting 75 to 100 players, 75 to like 125 players, you're looking at a major. And then anything above that, you're looking at a super major. Though I could be wrong. That's just my own feelings around it. So a big tournament, and the Guard went 5-0. Yeah, baby. I feel like Guard must be up to at least half a dozen event wins now, since the whole Guard S tier thing came out from the Fireside podcast. I feel like they've got to be up there. Guard are strong right now. Guard are strong. I don't know. I am not being biased here. I'm being honest. I don't think Guard are too strong. We don't have the full package yet. We have good points, and we have a large variety of solid data sheets, and we have a good amount of variety of viable playstyles. Guard are just in a kind of like a drawable position. The big thing though is the one thing that's sort of holding Guard back a little bit at the moment. Is our detachment is kind of shit. So we're basically achieving these results right now. We're achieving these results right now without a detachment rule, because artillery was the only thing that was really benefiting from the detachment rule, and it's been nerfed to Kingdom Come. So it's still like possible to go heavy artillery. And occasionally your other units will benefit from it. But yeah, I think Guard, what to say, man? Guard, you want pure infantry? That works. You want pure mechanized? That works. You want to go artillery heavy? Still works, man. Still works. You want to go pure science? Still works. I think if I was to point out, if you had to twist my arm and I'd say one thing that makes Guard so damn good at the moment, so damn enjoyable to play, is we have so many viable playstyles, and that gives us a big advantage. If you play into like old index orcs, you always knew what they were going to bring, and it made it relatively easy to predict what they were going to do and then counter it. Similar what you find with like Death Guard, for example, they always bring the same. They were for a time all bringing like Mortar and 3 Plague Boast Crawlers, and after a while it became easy to predict and counter. Guard, you will if you went to GT and faced 3 Guard players over the, if you went to Guard 3 times, every single one of those Guard players would have a different army, and a different playstyle, and a different attitude. Just huge variety. That's what makes us so powerful at the moment. That it takes a while for people to build up the experience to be like, okay, I need to counter this, and this. You can turn up, and even if you do face someone who's got like 80 infantry, 4 tanks, and 2 artillery, and you face another person that's got 80 infantry, 4 tanks, 2 artillery, the first player might have got all his infantry as like Krieg, and all his tanks are slightly, and his main powers in the Krieg. So you learn from that game, like, okay, well, I need to like focus the Krieg, they're durable. You go into the second game and you face someone who's got all like Cadians and Catachans, and his tanks are the main deal, and you go and take that experience of the first game and you go, okay, so I need to go after the infantry time. You clear the infantry and then tank smash you. It's like, well, I've just played 2 different games against 2 very similar lists, and yet I've had 2 completely different lessons learned from it. So that's a big factor, the big factor. And it's one of the things that I think is going to make orcs so damn tasty. And what I think will be a huge like soft factor that people will take, will give orcs potentially. I don't know if it'll boost their win rate, but like Guard, it might boost their ability to go 4-1 or higher. It's going to be, you play multiple orc players, and they're all going to have different lists, different personalities, different play styles, and different attitudes, and that will, each one will require playing into at least once to get the experience against it. World Eaters. 24 players, 54 games won out of 118, and 3 people going 4-1, 46% win rate, but 0 event wins. World Eaters have definitely fallen into a comfortable pattern. We've been saying this for a few weeks now. Definitely fall into a comfortable pattern. We are seeing a relatively stable, I would hesitate to say stagnant. At this stage, I think we are seeing maybe a little stagnant, maybe a little stale, but we're seeing a relatively stable number of player numbers. We're seeing a reasonable number of wins each week, although I can't remember the last time that I saw World Eaters poke their head above the 50% parapet for a long time. And we often see people going 4-1, but they don't win events. I don't think I've seen World Eaters win an event in a while. They're a pressure army, and they are a very good pressure army, and they absolutely can they can pressurize, and they can charge their way, and some very good players will use a lot of nuanced tactics as well with them. But by and large, they run at you, and apparently for some players, 80% of the time it works every time. But I think the problem with World Eaters is there's always going to be one matchup which fucks them. That typically is the matchup with Custodes, whether that'll still be a thing. Matchup with Custodes and matchup with Death Guard, because they also get to fight first, and they make the World Eaters like not as good at hitting. So World Eaters are good, but they have a couple of bad matchups, and unfortunately for them, those bad matchups are somewhat common factions. Like Custodes are pretty common, Death Guard are pretty common. So I think that definitely means that they often can go 3-2, 2-3. Some very good players with the faction will go 4-1, but they never quite bring home the gold, which is sad because World Eaters are cool, but understandable when your faction is so damn one-dimensional. After World Eaters, we have my beloved Death Guard. You heard me right. I said beloved. I really like Death Guard. I think Death Guard are similar to Imperial Guard. It's in they're kind of in that Goldilocks zone right now, where they're very strong. They have a variety of play styles that work, and you know, the no two Death Guard. Whilst Death Guard often run the triple Plague Burst Call of Mortarian thing, I've seen huge amounts of variety. Like, that's still a staple, but for every person you see running that list, you see another person running a different list. So they've got a good amount of variety, good playstyle. Their rules feel really fun to use. I think Death Guard can be a little frustrating to play into. I know I've spoken with a couple of the guard guys that I've run my Death Guard into with the battle reports have come away going, man, that was frustrating. Like not with me, just in general, that game is frustrating. So I think that Death Guard can be a little frustrating for some armies to play into, but when you're using them, they feel really good. They feel right. They feel like they should do. I think Death Guard, after a rocky launch in 10th, Games Workshop has got them right. 38 players is a very healthy number of players, showing that there is not only a diehard community there, but there's also enough players there that are trying the faction out for sort of competitive things as well. That's the same number of player as there's clearly is some play there, because the same number of play as Guard, and Guard, as we know, are an up and coming faction. 46% win rate is pretty good. The only thing that worries me about the Death Guard this week is we've seen no one go 4-1 with them. I find that surprising. I do find that surprising. I think Custodes are a 4-on-1 faction. I think they have it in them. I'm going to say this is a little glitch in the matrix. Yeah, I find it surprising no one went 4-on-1 with the faction. Sure. But overall, the reason why Death Guard are good is they have solid data sheets with a good army ability and fairly competitive points costs. They've got the whole package. There's always some factions with a little bit better than them, but Death Guard are in a strong place at the moment, and I genuinely like playing with my Death Guard. Speaking of the word death, it's the Death Watch. Oh my god, what is the Death Watch doing up here? 47% win rate? My god, sir. That does look very nice, but sorry. 3 players for a brief moment. Like a star going bright before going dark. We saw Deathwatch players surge to almost double digits. But there's no hope for that faction at the moment. As a guard player, when I see Deathwatch that low down, I don't know if anyone else gets this kind of urge, but when I see a faction that low down, it makes me want to collect them. It makes me want to get a Deathwatch army and be like, how can we find the secret source? That's what it makes me want to do. So Deathwatch, my take is they actually seem pretty good. Their units seem pretty good. It just seems like they seem a little overcosted. The big question I have for Deathwatch players is, can I get Rhino? I know people go like, Morty, and you're trying to mech up again. I am trying to mech up again. Can you get a Rhino? What can you get? Yeah, I think if we're gonna make this work, we've got to make Black Spear Task. If we're gonna do this challenge, we've got to go Black Spear Task Force challenge. Imperial Knights. I don't have a huge amount to say on Imperial Knights. They remain a popular faction. They remain, 30 players with 70 wins out of 149 games. 4 people going 4-1 with a 47% win rate. This is an improvement over last week, but I still feel like Imperial Knights are in the shadow of Chaos Knights. My experience with Imperial Knights is we're still seeing a lot of people leaning into the baby knights, but not like exclusively. But I have to say, Imperial Knights remain somewhat of a blind spot for me. In the 2 local metas I am part of, I don't see anyone running them. Imperial Knights remain as a bit of a gatekeeper at the moment, because did you bring an advantage tank? Brilliant. They're fucked. Did you not bring an advantage tank? Oh dear, you're fucked. Speaking of which, we have Drukhari. So fortunately, everyone went Sky Splinter Assault this time, which is good. 22 players shows stabilizing Drukhari numbers. 51 wins out of 108 games played, with 3 people going 4-1, leading to a 47% win rate. Drukhari have settled. They came in with a splash. Everyone was like, oh shit, who are these guys? And it turned out that Sky Splinter Assault has been amazing for the faction. It hasn't suddenly made them S tier though. Sky Splinter Assault is a great example of GW landing. They're sticking. They make the landing. They don't fuck the landing. Okay. I feel like Sky Splinter Assault has done the Drukhari very, very well. It's settled them into a comfortable 50. I'd say it's settled into a comfortable 48% win rate with a 2% variance. Sometimes we see it climb up to 50%. Sometimes we see it fall down to 45%. But on average, I think they're coming out at about 47%. I've actually not had the pleasure of playing into Sky Splinter Assault yet, and I really, really want to, because I saw how tragically bad the old one was. I really want to see. I really want to experience the new one. But all I can say is Sky Splinter Assault. You just don't hear any bad things about it anymore. Not really. It ain't perfect, but it allows Drukhari to at least go into a tournament, come away with the head held high. Chaos Demons. It is the Demons. Chaos Demons continuing their trend of having a reasonable number of players with 42 wins out of 88 games played. Two of those players going 4-1. 48% win rate, but no tournament wins. Chaos Demons don't win tournaments. Chaos Demons just basically cuckold 1 or 2 people every time, but they never win tournaments. I think Chaos Demons have won one tournament in 10th edition since this year, and they won it with a draw. So, might have won 2. One was with a draw, one legitimately. Chaos Demons, what they used to do is take Be'lakor, Shalaxi, Lord of Change, and a Bloodthirster. And now what they do is basically pull the pants down and take a big steaming dump on the table, take 2 or 3 of those dumps, and move them around saying that they're great unclean ones. That's basically what Chaos Demons. It's still Monster Mash, but it has evolved. It is no longer like relying upon relying on the 4 best friends. We are now seeing heavy lead into great unclean ones. Rotigus is a thing. Great unclean ones are definitely a thing. And it's interesting how the Chaos Demons have pivoted, but it hasn't actually really changed anything. Hasn't changed anything big for the faction in terms of their overall like performance. Their playstyle is still the same. Their performance is still basically the same. They're now just using a different set of tools to do it. But it's important not to dismiss them, because the big question is they have managed to continue to tread water and continue to do quite well, but not like game winning, not like tournament winning, I should say. The big question is how bad would they have sunk if they hadn't had those changes. So it's not necessarily, you should definitely not think that the changes have done nothing for Demons, but it just may look like that from a casual glance. Next we have Chaos Knights. So Chaos Knights and Imperial Knights, both very, very similar comments to be applied to both. Now with Imperial Knights, there's some debate on whether there's some small debate. I think most people still lean into the little knights, but there's some debate being had about the big knights, and especially we're seeing a lot of people favor like Canis Rex, especially as an allied force. Chaos Knight, it's like fuck those big knights. No interest in big knights whatsoever. Chaos Knights, it's all about the War Dogs. It's War Dog spam. Give me War Dog spam or give me death. And that is all like very. If you see someone with Chaos Knights and they're not spamming War Dogs, either they've got a plan or they haven't got enough War Dogs yet. And most of the time it's the latter, not the former. So yeah, Chaos Knights, same shit. Lots and lots of baby knights hitting on 2s in combat. Lots and lots of other baby knights hitting on 2s in shooting. They have the advantage over Imperial Knights in which their baby knights are way more specialized and therefore at their given task a bit more efficient. One thing that we have taken, one thing that has been since a lot of the nerfs that Imperial Knights received early on, one thing that has been consistently true is Chaos Knights have been above Imperial Knights. And if you're going to collect Knights, then sell yourself to the Dark Gods, because apparently that will get your win rate up and give you just overall better performance. 28 players, 66 games, 66 wins, 136 games, 5 players going 4-1. 49% win rate puts them perilously in a really, really comfy position. They're almost at the 50, which is really nice. And one person actually won an event with them. Ha! Amazing. So actually, he won the big one. So maybe there's something to this Chaos Knights. I would love to know what list that was. 5-0 at a major with Chaos Knights. Maybe the War Dogs have got something to them. Or maybe there's a secret source. What was, has JCMS passed any comment on it? No, he's not added. I'm surprised he didn't mention anything about Chaos Knights winning an event, but there we are. The Leagues of Votann continue to basically be the anti-meta faction. That's what they are right now. So there are a huge amount of armies. This is sort of a general take on the meta, and then this sort of leads into Votann. The majority of lists that I play into now revolve around three to six. I wouldn't say 3 to 6. I'd say 3 or 4 linchpin units. And something I've noticed a lot with 10th edition, with the removal of the Force Org chart, people don't take a lot of redundancy anymore. And rather, they try and go as efficient as possible on the assumption that extra efficiency will mean they won't need to have a backup plan because the first plan is going to work. Because they've got because every unit they've taken is really, really good at its job. And that actually makes sense. You know, if you think about it, if you take redundancy, then often what you're doing is you're adding inefficiency because you're taking 2 units to do 1 unit's job. Whereas what you want is a unit that, you know, the logic is you want 1 unit that can do that job really, really well. The issue with that kind of approach is if someone takes away that unit. It's one of the old problems that Guard used to have, where it's like Guard infantry was used for objectives, and Guard tanks are good for killing stuff. And so what people would do is they would basically just target one aspect of the Guard army, and then the other aspect of the army couldn't pick up the slack. And to a certain extent, Guards still do have that issue where if you kick, it's like a finely balanced stool, and if you kick one leg out from under it, the whole stool can fall over. It's why I've always been a big believer in redundancy, because it means that if I lose 1 unit, I can still, if I lose 1 anti-tank unit, I've still got 3 more that can do anti-tank. So I think that. So that's an important note. So basically, people are not taking redundancy, people are taking efficiency. Leagues of Votann really counter that. Because if they're like, oh, you've got like 3 or 4 high value units, which all do individually a very good job. Oath. And then they go dead. And it's like, got a backup plan for each of those units? It's like, nah. Like, sucks for you then. So not only are they good at killing individual targets, they're very anti-meta at the moment in the way that a lot of lists are being built. That's just what I had to say. I've noticed so many, like the number of lists that I have played where someone's been like, I've taken this unit, that covers my anti-tank, and I just look at it and I go, well, obviously that's the first thing I'm going to kill then. And I kill that unit, my opponent's like, oh, this game's basically over then. I can't kill your tanks now. I'm like, well, I literally had someone get a little salty. It wasn't Simon either. I've had someone get a little salty with me at a tournament. Because I was like, okay, so where's your anti-tank in your army? And he was like, this big unit here. And I was like, okay. So first turn, I just nuked it. The moment it poked its head out, I just nuked it. And he was like, well, I can't. That's really, I don't have any anti-tank left now. And I was like, yeah. Now, I'm being purposely vague because it was a tournament game. You know, tournament after action report and all that kind of stuff. But he was fine. Like, you could just tell. Salty's not the right word. He just took the wind out of his sails. And I was like, well, yeah. If that's your early anti-tank, that's what I'm gonna take out. So it was so Votann are really good at doing that. Votann are really good at basically identifying an Achilles heel and just crushing it. That's why they consistently do very well. They are very much they're not just anti-Necron. They were very good. They were very good at killing Necron Catan, but they're not just anti-Necron. I think that maybe with Necrons going down a little bit, we might see Leagues of Votann go down a little bit, but I think then it's not just an anti-Necron thing. There's a few armies that do that now. Eldar just doing Eldar things, baby. I think we're going to see a little bit. I think we're going to see a return of the Nine Fears. I know how many times do we need to just punch these guys in the fucking twat before they just get the message? All right, like 40 wins, 40 players, 95 wins out of 194 games played. So on the surface, only a 49% win rate, but 8 players going 4-1. And 3 tournament wins. That is more tournament wins than Necrons. Let me say that again. That is more towards. Is that the highest tournament wins this week? Joint highest? That is the joint highest tournament wins this week. They've in a funny sort of way, they've become more of a problem again. Do you know why? Because now they're the scourge of the mid-tables and of the local events. Basically, Eldar are no longer consistently, I think occasionally, but they're not consistently a super major winning faction. But they are certainly a local GT winning faction and a local RTT winning faction. And they seem to be doing it at an alarming rate with alarming consistency. I think Eldar fall into... I think they're still a very, very competitive faction. They are not dead. And I think this 49% win rate somewhat cloaks their underlying power. And these, a bit like with Guard... These are the numbers we need to be looking at. And the fact that still, if they were a dead faction, they would not be one of the most popular every week if they were a dead faction. Tau. Blech. 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 Tau is just still being cuckolded. And I like it. The more Tau suffer, the better. Oh, man. Another, how many weeks? Too many. Too many weeks I've been saying, next week the Tau Codex will be coming soon, guys. Jesus Christ. So, I mean, I know exactly how the Tau feel, because we went through exactly the same thing at the end of 9th edition. It is unbelievably frustrating. It's amazing that we're seeing so many people still run them at with only the index. The index seems to be doing really well. Do you know what it'll be? There are a lot of people, whether rightly or wrongly, the general perception of the new Tau Codex, the general perception, not like the deep perception, but the general shallow surface perception of the new Tau Codex, is it's a bit shit. And so my suspicion is that there might be a lot of people trying to get their final reps in with the Tau before they go, fuck this, I'm going over to something else. Before they know they're going to have to shelve the army or start reinvesting in it. Reinvesting in some new models and whatnot. I think that could be a very bad hot take, but I'm going off chit chat rather than going off deep diving there. I think a lot of people just saw, like they have some good. So Odd Job Squatch basically sums it up. People running cyclic iron blasters while they still can. Exactly. That's basically it, man. Basically it. Now, looking at where the Tau are, 22 players is not a bad amount. Admech would fucking kill a guy for that number of players, so a Deathwatch. 55 wins out of 109 games. 5 people going 4-1. And someone actually won an event with them. And a 50% win rate. Perfectly balanced, as all things should be. Not bad. 44 player event, which had Eldar and Necrons in it. Not too bad at all. Yeah, we don't know how good the Tau Codex is going to be until the points hit, right? Because the new points because the new points are very cheap. The current points are very cheap. And it'll be interesting to see if they get cheaper or stay the same or get more expensive. It's interesting to see how GW changes them up. Most people, if you're curious about Tau battlesuits, most people are saying that Tau, from what I've seen, from who I've chatted to about it, they said that you won't see battlesuit spam, but you'll probably see one suit of like the melter one squad of the melter battlesuits, led by a commander with all the melter as well, and so you can get like 8 melter shots out of one squad or something. But yeah. That's apparently where the suitage is gonna be, and then elsewhere we're gonna see other things being used more than typical 18 crisis. That's a bit of exaggeration. No more than the typical like mass crisis suit spam. So, Adeptus Custodes. Firstly, the player numbers have dropped significantly. What we've also noticed is whilst the win rate has the win rate has stayed somewhat consistent. the number of games, the number of players which are going sort of 4-1 has also come down. Now, that probably does more have to do with the fact that proportionally it's come down with the number of players that have gone down. So essentially, the Custodians were really on an upward trajectory. Really, they were reaching for the sky, and the player numbers have dropped. The percentage has leveled out, and the number of people going 4-1 has also taken a big hit. I think that there are so I think there's basically a couple of good reasons for this. Now, I know that there are going to be some people out there who would love this stat right here to be a reflection of some of the spicy lore conversations that are going on, shall we say. I personally do not think that has had any major, it might have had a minor, but I don't think that's had any major impact on the Custodians. Because at the end of the day, what are we looking at here, guys? We are looking at tournament stats. And frankly, the competitive meta doesn't give a rat's ass about the lore. No. And especially a faction like Custodians. There are very, I would say that there is a minority of tournament players that were collecting Custodians because they liked the lore. I think the majority of tournament players that had Custodians did so not because they were like supremely brokenly powerful, because they go through phases. Sometimes they're very good, sometimes they're not so good. But the reason why I think a lot of people get them is because they often are a very affordable, very easy to get up and running competitive army. And so frankly, what I think we're just seeing here is people sort of just moving away from the faction somewhat in anticipation for the Codex coming out. And the Codex it's widely believed to be quite bad, quite a step down in terms of power. But look, guys, if people were completely abandoning this faction, we wouldn't be having 41 plus players here. 41 plus players might be somewhat low for Custodians, but in the grand scheme of things, looking at the rest of the factions here, it's not low. Like, it's as many people are playing Custodians as people are playing Eldar, right? And so what I think we'll probably see is, I think Custodians will always remain. I think, because I don't know how far the Custodians numbers will go down. They did get a lot of points cuts. I think Custodians have taken a big hit, but fundamentally they're still a very easy faction to get their hands on. Can they? The big question for Custodians: can they still sit on the middle objective and deploy teleport to homers? My suspicion is that Custodians will. If I now that I know that those points haven't changed that much, and understanding that a lot of their like they've gone from like 4 plus feel no pain to like 5 plus feel no pain, stuff like that. I don't think we'll see Custodians hit like Deathwatch levels of problem. But I think we'll see Custodians players fall down quite low for them, and maybe even low generally speaking. Custodians have always been a faction that has waxed and waned. They're always a faction that when people are good, they pull them off the shelf, and when people are bad, they put them on the shelf. I think Custodians, they're never always good. But probably they basically go 6 months on, 6 months off. And every edition, they always have their time in the sun. Maybe they just had it early on this time. I don't know. But yeah, Custodians, they are a second army for a lot of competitive players. And it would not surprise me if a lot of competitive players, without even blinking, just put one army on the shelf and get another army off the shelf. Yeah. Necrons! 6-7 players. Still the most popular faction. I suspect that this was maybe the last weekend with the old points. I suspect. Maybe it's with the new points. 6-7 players, 171 games played, 326. 101 games won, 326 games played, 19 victories. 19 people going 4-1, but only 2 event wins. Now that is surprising. Holy fuck, Hypercrypt Legion. Holy Hypercrypt Burnt Face, man. That's a chicken flavored cereal bar. 43 people played Hypercrypt. Of those 43, almost a third of them went fucking 4-1. But only one of those people actually won an event. Holy shit. Canoptic Court. Normally, I mean, Canoptic Court's always been like the slightly less popular, but still very popular Necron dynasty. 46 games, 1 out of 97 played. 4 people going 4-1. 47% win rate, 1 tournament win. So both of these titles won 1 tournament. But even though Canoptic Court only had half of the Hypercrypt Legion's players, they only had a third of the number of people that went 4-1. But it does feel like Hypercrypt is starting to re-establish itself as the dominant attachment. For a while there, it looked like Hypercrypt was kind of like the sleeper. It was actually the better one. It just took a little bit more. It wasn't as popular. But it seems now, at least this week, that Hypercrypt has re-established itself as the dominant. Do you want to go to a tournament and probably podium? Then you go Hypercrypt Legion. You might not win the event, but you'll probably podium. Some people tried Awakened Dynasty, and they did okay. Yeah. In fact, amazing. Apparently, the people that took Awakened Dynasty did better than the people that took Canoptic Court, but that is just a smaller sample size, slightly skewed. So, yeah. I mean, there's not much to say, right? It's Hypercrypt. Hypercrypt, more than likely running the old points. When the stats come rolling in, which dynasties people pivot to. But what a hell of a last week for old point Necrons. Hell of a last week. 19 people going 4-1, 2 event wins. Damn fine showing, sir. Damn fine showing indeed. Good on the Necrons, man. Getting one last burst of energy out before having to consult the cogitators, their internal logic engines for where they go next. Grey Knights. So Grey Knights, really big upsurge. Fuck me. Do you know what? I think I made a bit of a prediction today with the video that came out with the Calexis Assassin video, and I said that people were going to basically move away from Custodes. And if they were to move away from Custodes, I think they'll come over to Grey Knights. I recorded that video a week and a half ago. A week and a half ago. I'm just saying, guys, get me to the black ships. Get me to the black ships. The week that the Custodes numbers fall down, the Grey Knight numbers go to the fucking moon, man. I'm just saying. Grey Knights are, if you basically want to pivot to pseudo Custodes, you go Grey Knights because you just take 6 baby carriers. You know how like that scene in Halo 2 where the changing of the guard happens and the brutes replace the elites. I think the Grey Knights are going to replace the Custodes. Not in the lore, obviously, but I think the Grey Knights are going to come in hard. And they are going to definitely... If you're right now a Necron player, and you're right now a Custodes player, and you're thinking, I want to pivot to a new army that is super easy to fucking paint, and super elite, and with, not prohibitively, like, expensive to buy, Grey Knights. Because they've been around forever. They've got an amazing second-hand market. Everyone and their mum has a Grey Knight army. I had a Grey Knight army for a couple of years at one point. Grey Knights. So I think Grey Knights are the inheritors, and it's looking like, I don't know, maybe I should be a Grey Knight. Maybe I'm a Psyker, because 41 players, who in what? Gentlemen, before I wipe this up too much, let's just put this in perspective, okay? Who would have thought it? That Grey Knights would become one of the most popular factions and one of the up-and-comers with 6 people going 4-1 and an event win under their belt. And also a very respectable 53% win rate. And that's a 53% win rate with a very, very solid sample size. Grey Knights are doing good. Grey Knights are doing good. And they're definitely one of the inheritors right now. Speaking of inheritors, we have Thousand Suns. So last week I said Thousand Suns were a really, really good faction and that they could be one of the new top factions. They're a little bit lower down now, but they are still one of the top 10. They're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They're 7th in the top 7 right now, so they're the top 8. Top 8 factions, top third of all factions. Thousand Suns, their fortunes wax and wane, man. Some weeks it's like only Zinch knows what's going on with this faction. 22 players is an okay number. Not great, not terrible. 58 victories out of 107 games. 4 people going 4-1. 54% win rate, but no one getting the gold this time. No one bringing home the win. The big thing here is if you look at Thousand Suns, they had half the number of players of Custodes and yet the same number of people going 4-1, and they had half the number of players of Grey Knights, and yet they only had a third less people going 4-1. So do not dismiss Thousand Suns. They are still what I still class them as one of the inheritors. They have a lot going for them. They have one of the best Demon Primarchs, nay, one of the best Primarchs in general in the game right now. I think Magnus is better than Angron because he's a little bit more flexible. Angron only does one thing. I also think that he's better than Gilliman. You don't see really people saying Gilliman anymore. And he's better than Mortarion, who's too busy babysitting his Plague Burst Crawlers. That's that simple. So we've got one of the best big monsters, in addition of big monsters. And they have some really good abilities with like double Doombolt and stuff like that. All right, so yeah, Thousand Suns, they're in a good position now. They're waxing and waning a little bit. It may be because people, they might be waxing and waning a little bit because whilst they are a strong faction, they're not one that's really being jumped on. So when you have a faction that's good but it's not being jumped on, sometimes you get these huge variances where the high skilled players of that faction 1 week play and the win rate goes up, and then the next week or the next 2 weeks the casual people will play and the win rate goes down. Then the high skilled players, people maining them, go up and the win rate goes up. There's a little bit more to it than that, but that is definitely a factor. And so I think that maybe seeing a Thousand Suns, that might explain why thousands are fluctuating a little bit. It may also simply be that, well, look, there's a lot of factions with sort of 55, 54, 53% win rates. So a single percentage difference can bump you up and down the list a lot. Speaking of a faction that is flippy floppying all over the goddamn shop, we have got Genestealer Cult. Oh, man. There's a bit of life getting breathed back into the Genestealer Cult corpse. A bit of life. Little, muscle spasm as the corpse finally goes through its death throes. And hey, Genestealer Cult, they've got double digits of players. And they had a 55% win rate. And they had 4 players go 4-1. And then one didn't even win a fucking event. What did he win? Did he win something big? I don't think Genestealer Cult are necessarily a bad faction. I just think they are somewhat boring. Can you roll 4 pluses? You do pretty well. You can't, you're going to have a bad time. I put GSC in the same camp as AdMech. They can win, but there seems to be precious few people willing to take the challenge on. But they're basically in the same camp as AdMech right now. Black Templars, yeah baby! Black Templars, 29 players, making them one of the more popular Marine factions this week. They had 75 wins out of 137 games played. 6 people going 4-1, winning 3 events overall. In fact, winning the second most events this week. Joint first most events this weekend. Something warms my heart. It's the idea of Black Templar players being just as good, if not better, than Eldar players. 55% win rate, very, very respectable. They have had a bit of an increase in points to some of their units. I don't think it's enough to really massively change anything, just makes it a bit more fair. They were getting free multi-melters. Gladius Task Force is making a huge comeback this week, and is doing so with multiple different chapters. Looks like people are jumping back on Gladius, which is interesting. The big thing with Black Templars is the Ironstorm Spearhead's done pretty well this week as well, getting a 51% win rate and actually winning one of the tournaments. But Righteous Crusaders continues to be the most popular detachment for the Black Templars. Basically, Black Templar players like running their guys as Black Templars. Every week, Black Templars are consistently the highest... Black Templars are not always the highest performing chapter week on week, but they are the most consistently well-performing chapter. Other chapters go up and down, they come and go. Sometimes they're great, sometimes they're terrible. Every single week, Black Templars make it into that base sort of, that top cut. Every single time. I don't think the point changes are going to do much about that. I just think they're a really, really solid faction. They have a lot going for them. And a lot of it comes down to some of their unique data sheets. I think, Helbrecht and Sword Brothers in a Land Raider terrifies the fuck out of me. And they have a variety of playstyles. Black Tide is still a thing. Going more elite with Black Templars is still a thing. Being able to take advantage of those multi-melters in Iron is still a thing. I think one of the unsung strengths of Black Templars is the variety that they can bring to the table. That I've said this a few times in this stream. That's probably one of the greatest things a faction can have is depth, and Black Templars have that more so than any other chapter. Black Templars have variety and depth. Speaking of well-performing chapters, Blood Angels continue their rise. This has been the comeback story of the century. Bigger than Votann, bigger than Death Guard. This has been the comeback story that I don't think anyone foresaw, and yet everyone is cheering them on. Blood Angels, they're like, fuck your Vanguard, fuck your Gladius, fuck your Ironstorm, fuck your First Company Task Force. Handful of people there. Out of 27 players, 22 of them ran Sons of Sanguinius. They had 60 wins out of 106 games played. 8 players out of the 9 for the faction total went 4-1, and they even won 2 events with Sons of Sanguinius, which were the only events that this faction won. So Vanguard didn't win anything, Ironstorm didn't win anything for Blood Angels. It's Sons of Sanguinius is just going and going and going. Drive them, Blood Angels, drive them. And it's awesome. It's awesome to see. Happy for them. Do you know what I want to see? I want to see how far this can go. I want to see. It's been climbing and climbing and climbing. Slowly but surely. It's gone up and down a little bit, but the trajectory by and large has been going up. And the thing that I am curious about, and I know a lot of people are curious about, is how far can they go? I think it would be a real shame for GW to cut the bollocks off this before we've seen if the Blood Angels if they can truly avenge Sanguinius and truly get that peace they want. Yeah. The Angels are in the ascendancy. I'm aboard the Blood Angels hype train. And I don't care even if they become a little oppressive for a few weeks. I want to see how far this can go. Can this make it to the top? I mean like the top. Maybe it's just 1 week. Maybe the Angels are going to fly too close to the sun. Maybe some of the points changes are going to rein this in. Maybe. But all I hope is that the Blood Angels continue to do the best Primarch proud. And I like Black Templars. We don't really have a Primarch. We're like a knockoff. We like knockoff Imperial Fist, right? Oh man, I like Black Templars, but I don't give a fuck about Dawn. I am all over that Sigismund, baby. I'm all about Sigismund. It's popping up, baby! Holy... Oh, no. Oh. Denzel. Is that a death strike in my trousers, or am I pleased to see you? So, Index Stormlands continues to continue to do well. As Madlarkin can confirm, Space Wolf Stormlands is pretty bloody spicy. Out of the 22 players that ran Space Wolves, 16 of them ran Stormlands, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 ran 4 other detachments. So these sample sizes are too small. Soz. This is the real meat of it. So really, they don't have a 57% win rate. Really, they have a 61% win rate. 25% of their players went 4-1. One person won an event. What event did they win? They won a 29 player, so a GT. A small GT, but a GT nonetheless. This is starting to become a problem. I don't know if GW's reined it in yet, but this is starting to become a problem. If every single week one faction is running one detachment, and every single week we are seeing them get very consistently strong results from it, it's starting to be a problem. Stormlands does wax and wane a bit. We have seen with it being a one-trick pony, we have had some weeks where it's been quite low, because basically people have kind of got used to it and adapted to it a little bit. But it's definitely on the ascendancy, and it's frankly, I'd just like to see a bit more variety for Space Wolves. Personally, it's hard, right? Because if you kick a clutch out from underneath the faction, they haven't got something else to balance onto. It's bad. Yeah. Yeah. Stormlands is powerful. Stormlands is a pressure list. Stormlands will be very, very frustrating if your opponent rolls a lot of 4-ups. And there's no denying that Stormlands, damn powerful, with deep overlapping combos. A powerful detachment, to be sure. One-dimensional. Will the new... Big question is, the big question is not what Stormlands are doing now, but where will Stormlands be in a couple of weeks? How will Stormlands fare into new orcs? Can you pressure list the pressure faction? If you run all of your Stormlands boys, Wolf boys, down the throat of 120 orc boys, are you going to come out on top in that? Probably not. Probably be brutal. But I think you probably need to be a bit more cunning. Take that on. And obviously, how will Stormlands do if we see the resurgence and domination of things like Tau? A lot of people saying Tau are good. If we see Tau come back in a big way, can you run down a gun line like Tau? Tau are fast. Typically, they're very fast. Trying to charge down Tau can work, but sometimes they dance around you. Be interesting to see what happens. Stormlands is good now. There are a couple of factions coming out which could really shake that up. Let's keep an eye on it. But I think if I was the GW balance team, this is if I would have one eye, or not both eyes, I'd have one eye on Space Wolf Stormlands, and I'd start thinking about how we can massage a bit of variety. Yeah. Sisters of Battle. Amazing faction, man. Slightly lower player numbers this week. Only 10. We've seen more than that in the past. So a smaller sample size, to be sure. But they did get 29 wins out of 50 games, with 40% of those 10 players going 4-1. 58% win rate with one person going all the way and winning an event. What size event did they win? Small. 28 player GT. But hey, they beat out World Eaters, Space and Vanguard, Drakari, and Tau. They beat out some others. I think Sisters are basically... we've spoken a lot about why Sisters are good. We're starting... So, a couple of things I want to say. Sisters are good because they basically have unnerfed Fate Dice. The Fate Dice come in late rather than early. So, rather than getting mag dumped at the beginning, you get mag dumped at the end. So that's a big thing. They have been doing very well into Necron Catan spam. If Necron Catan spam goes away, do Sisters stay as relevant? Big question. I think with results like this week on week, I think the answer is yes. What's kind of interesting is I said a little while ago that I thought that Mechanized Sisters, I know I'm talking about Mechanized again, that Mechanized Sisters might have some play. And I don't know if it's this week. I don't know. But last week, we saw someone win an event with Triple Castigator. It doesn't work for every faction, but... It doesn't work for every faction. And there's another Sisters army that did very well and didn't have any Castigators, so who knows. But I think that... Sisters are more than just Fate Dice and Melter. I think Sisters have been slept on. Lol. In your endo. But I think now they're in the ascendancy. If I was to designate a faction, as very much in contention for Inheritors, then Sisters would be up there. Along with Grey Knights and Blood Angels. Yeah. Last army we have is Dark Angels. I personally think that this is a bit of a blip. Okay. There was more than 8 players, by the way. This looks like a bit of a mistake with the data. There was 18 players, it looked like. So, oh wait, less. Wow. The data is totally skewed here, man. 8 players, 24 wins. That doesn't look right. Either Dark Angels only had 8 players, or the data here is a bit skewy. Because that would look like 8 players if they only played 34 games, right? Yeah. I'm gonna put a little pin here. This data looks like it's got a few issues in it. This top bit here. Because obviously these numbers here don't line up with these numbers here. So what we'll probably do is just say, I'm just going to say this is an anomaly overall. I don't think Dark Angels are this high. I think there's probably some results here that aren't quite right. There may be some totally legit takeaways here, but like not surprised if Inner Circle aren't doing very good. Not surprised if Ironstorm's doing very good. But overall, I think Dark Angels, this is a bit of a blip this week. So we'll basically say, and I think it's an anomalous result. I think Sisters are the top faction this week. This is the third, if we, just cut out Dark Angels for now, because we don't really get, trust the data. This is in the last 3 months, this is the third time that Sisters have basically been the top faction. You have some people that pop up here occasionally and aren't seen again. When it's popping up at least once a month, you're the top faction. That's important. If I was to pick out one faction that has the potential to be the next top army, I think Sisters could be that next top army. I don't think they're alone in contention for that. But I think Sisters are consistently an army that is doing well. I can't remember, they're not always top, but I can't remember the last time they weren't in the top half and they weren't in the top third or even the top 8. Yeah. So going through, we've got Sisters at the top. As you said last week, Sisters on top, as we like it. Can't complain. Chance to be a fine thing. Oh, man. Of course, Sarah makes a good point. Sisters made this good result because of low player numbers, pretty much no newbies or Taurus. Fair. So yeah, it's just the core, the elite core. Yeah. So going through, if I was to pick out top factions from this week, I think Sister Battle are consistently very good. I think Black Templars are consistently very good. And I think Grey Knights are very good. If I was to pick out 3, so I think they're the ones that are consistently performing well. If I was to pick out 3 factions that I think could inherit the crown of being top faction, I think Thousand Suns still are in there, and I think Sister Battle are still there, and I would probably say Grey Knights are going to be there. Grey Knights are certainly going to be the inheritors of the Custodes, but factions that aren't necessarily the full-blown inheritors yet, but maybe are on the ascendancy, are climbing the ladder. I think Guard are hugely in the ascendancy at the moment. It's roller coasting, but by and large, the numbers that matter are consistently going up. I think Death Guard are consistently in the ascendancy as well. And I think Eldar are making a good showing of themselves again. Factions which I think are struggling right now, I think Tyranids are. I would actually peg Tyranids for probably the bottom faction in the edition. They're always in the bottom 2 or 3, like always. They're very, very fun. They have some play. They're not so bad that they can't get any wins, but they're consistently. They just win on points. And that can work, but it's not a recipe to win many events with. If I had to pick a faction that I think is another faction I think is struggling, I think that obviously Deathwatch struggling a little bit, but no, I guess Tyranids right now are the only ones that I see consistently as bad. Not including obvious dead factions like Deathwatch. Admech, I think Admech are slowly crawling up. Slowly. It'll be interesting to see if GW tweaks them. Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Remember Godlocks, A-tier faction member. Who said it they were A-tier, man? That's a load of bollocks if they said they're A-tier. Nids can win games, and they do have occasional surges and flurries, but you know how Black Templars aren't always on top, but they're consistently doing well? Tyranids aren't always bottom, but they're consistently... They're not always bottom, but they're consistently doing badly. Remember Carnifex, A-tier faction member, out of war. They got thoroughly lambasted. Ugh. To be fair, the people that said Guard were S-tier got thoroughly lambasted. Out of war. They have a lot of very experienced players. I am surprised they said they were A-tier. I suspect they probably meant like 1 or 2 builds specifically were A-tier. But but yeah, I think there's probably a bit more to it than that. But or maybe look, who amongst us is infallible, eh? I've made a lot of bad takes in my time. And out of war, you know, maybe it was just maybe it was a bad take. Maybe there's a bit more to it. Yeah. Yeah. The Tyranids player wasn't there. Fair enough. Fair enough. I never, even if I strongly disagree with with like someone like a content creator or something like that, I'll never shit on them, because you know, I'm sure there's a lot of people that disagree strongly with me and disagree with my my pretty bad takes. So yeah, hey, Out of War per experience, I know what they're talking about, but maybe they made a bad take, maybe they just misjudged something, or maybe they were talking about something like specific within the Tyranids. Yeah, there you go. But interesting. I'd say, you know what? Interesting they said that. I wouldn't I'm dubious, but I'm not completely dismissing that take. No way, shape, or form, sir. No way, shape, or form. All right. Do you know what, though? Do you want a real hot take? Deathwatch meta incoming. Do you know why? Do you know why Deathwatch meta incoming? I'm going to make the Deathwatch meta incoming. I'm going to make it happen. You watch me. You watch me, chat. You watch me. Everyone says they're terrible. I don't know. I see some spicy meatballs. I see some potential within that faction. And I want to see what we can do with these things. There's such a niche army that there's like, if there's such a niche army that I have no idea. No one is gonna watch this journey. No one's gonna give a fuck about it. But I want to do it. It's a personal challenge. I want to see something going on here. I want to see something. I'm gonna get a Deathwatch army, and I'm gonna see if I'm gonna get Deathwatch. I'm gonna go Blackspear Task Force, and I'm gonna make it work. So we've got negative waves. Oh, that's a dirty. Is it dirty? Does a reference with like oddball sticking out the top? Nice. Stompy. Hell on heels. Nice. Regicide. That's got to be a Vanquisher, right? Angry Armadillo. Cookie's Kitchen. Nice. Bug Zapper for the Hydra. Group Therapy from the Hydra. And Miss Moonshine for what has got to be a giant fucking walker, right? Giant fucking Baneblade. Nice. Incredible models. Awesome color scheme. And very, very good names. Very good nicknames, the vehicles, man. I like that. I like that a lot. And on that awesome note, I'm going to bring the stream to a close, boys. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed the stream. And of course, as always, see you guys next time. Would you like to know more? If so, then please consider becoming a channel member or patron. By supporting the channel, not only will you be doing your part, but you'll also be helping me create more content for your viewing pleasure and unlocking a whole host of perks. You get everything from a badge next to your name, custom emojis, but the big one is access to the Mordian Glory Discord server, an online community with almost 2,500 active members. It's always popping off in the MG Discord. We've got channels for army lists, hobbying, tactics, stories, and even a pretty spicy meme section as well. For all you greenhorns that wanted to see the Mordian Glory Hole, today is your lucky day. And joking aside, I do want to say a massive thank you to all of the current channel members and patrons. You guys are amazing. Truly the lifeblood of the channel. I could not do Mordian Glory full-time without the incredible and generous support of my members. So thank you guys so much. And last but certainly not least, I want to say a personal thank you to all of my top tier Patreons. These are the War Masters, the people who have truly gone above and beyond the call of duty. So a heartfelt thank you to Alex Dengal, Bon Vert, Mad Larkin, Marcus Roberts, Mark Panconi, RJ Scorpion, Swordfish Trombone, Try Again Bragg, John Stubbs, Nick Wolf, Diesel Fox, and August Barney. Seriously guys, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Your support is incredible and it makes a huge difference. Thank you so much. That's all for now. Hope you've all enjoyed today's video, and of course, as always, see you guys next time.